Have you ever wondered why, even with all the knowledge in the world at our disposal, we often feel lost, not knowing which path to take? Perhaps something is missing that human knowledge alone cannot offer: divine wisdom. That's what we're going to talk about today. If you feel the need for a true spiritual transformation and have been seeking answers that seem beyond your reach, know that the wisdom that comes from God might be the key to unlocking a purposeful life. What you're going to discover here today could change the way you see daily decisions, your relationships, and your inner peace. Biblical wisdom has the power to transform even the most difficult situations, bringing clarity where there is doubt and hope where there is despair. Don't leave this video, because what I'm going to share may be exactly what you need to start a new phase in your life. Before we continue, I ask you to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. This helps spread this powerful message and reach more people who need this divine wisdom. And if you're going through a difficult situation, leave your prayer request in the comments. We'll be praying for you because we believe in the power of prayer and God's care for each of us. The essence of wisdom. Wisdom is one of the most sought after and admired qualities by humanity. Since ancient times, people have asked where it comes from. Is it the result of our accumulated experiences over the years, or does it come from something greater and deeper? It's possible that what we call wisdom is actually a manifestation of divine wisdom that transcends our limited understanding. If we reflect carefully, we'll realize that it's no coincidence that in many moments of spiritual transformation, we find God's wisdom as a guide. Wisdom, at its core, is much more than the accumulation of knowledge. The essence of wisdom is directly tied to our search for God's way. When we look at biblical wisdom, we find eternal principles that teach us how to live justly, balanced, and full of purpose. However, we often confuse knowledge with wisdom, as if they were the same thing. Knowledge helps us understand the world around us, but God's wisdom reveals the divine purpose behind each situation. In this sense, wisdom is like a light that illuminates our path, especially in moments of doubt or uncertainty. How many times in your life have you faced difficult decisions? Most of the time, we seek advice, read books, or consult experts to guide us. Yet, even with all the help, there's a feeling of emptiness, as if something is missing. This emptiness is often only filled by divine revelation. When we allow God's wisdom to guide our decisions, we achieve a clarity that goes beyond what human wisdom can offer. This clarity is the result of a life with purpose, aligned with what God has planned for us. The Bible teaches us that wisdom is not something unreachable, reserved for a few. On the contrary, it is available to all who seek it wholeheartedly. Spiritual transformation occurs when we set aside pride and recognize that we don't have all the answers. When we come before God with humility, He grants us divine wisdom. Proverbs 2 verse 6 says, "For the Lord gives wisdom. From His mouth come knowledge and understanding." This is the divine wisdom that surpasses any earthly experience. In our journey, it's crucial that we learn to differentiate between human wisdom and divine wisdom. Human wisdom, valuable as it may be, is always limited by our faults, fears, and doubts. It's shaped by circumstances and personal experiences, which means it can be flawed and incomplete. Divine wisdom, however, is eternal, perfect, and unchanging. Those who seek this wisdom with faith and humility find answers that transform their lives in ways that can't always be explained by human logic. Wisdom is not just about making the right choices, but about living a life that reflects God's purpose. a life where every decision and every action is rooted in biblical wisdom. By following this path, we are spiritually transformed and become capable of facing challenges with confidence, knowing that we are being guided by something far greater than ourselves. Now that we understand this essence, it's important to explore how we can practically seek this divine wisdom, allowing it to transform us daily. Seeking divine wisdom. Seeking divine wisdom is one of the most important steps we can take on our spiritual journey. But how exactly do we do this? The answer is closer than we imagine. The Bible offers us a clear and accessible guide to finding this wisdom from God. In passages like Proverbs 2 verse 6, we understand that the Lord grants wisdom to those who ask for it. This means we don't need to rely solely on our own limited understanding. The first step is to recognize that true wisdom does not come from ourselves, but from divine revelation. One of the biggest obstacles in the search for divine wisdom is pride. Often, we believe that we know what is best for our lives. However, James 1 verse 5 teaches us that if we lack wisdom, we should ask God, who gives generously. And it is precisely with a humble heart that we approach Him in prayer. We can start this quest for wisdom with a simple prayer, asking God to enlighten us in our daily decisions and guide us down the right path. This direct connection with the Creator is the starting point for spiritual transformation. In practice, seeking God's wisdom means dedicating time to meditate on the Scriptures. It's not just about quickly reading passages, but truly reflecting on what God is trying to teach us through His Word. A clear example of this is in the Psalms, where David constantly sought divine guidance for his challenges. We can follow this example by dedicating a few minutes a day to studying the Bible, starting with books like Proverbs, which are rich in biblical wisdom. This daily habit creates space for divine revelation in our lives. In addition to reading the Bible, another way to seek divine wisdom is through wise counsel. God often uses people around us to offer guidance and answers to the questions we seek. It could be a spiritual leader, a friend who shares the same faith, or even a moment of wisdom received through a simple conversation. The important thing is to be open to recognizing these opportunities and to realize that God can use various ways to guide us, as long as our hearts are receptive. Seeking divine wisdom also requires patience. We don't always receive immediate answers or the clarity we desire right away. God works in His own time, and often uses moments of waiting to mold us and strengthen our faith. Just as a farmer plants a seed and patiently waits for the harvest, we need to trust that at the right moment, God's wisdom will manifest clearly and powerfully. Meanwhile, we can continue to cultivate our relationship with Him, trusting that every step on God's path brings us closer to our purpose. As we persist in this search, we begin to notice subtle changes in our lives. Our decisions become clearer, our thoughts more aligned with God's will, and inner peace starts to replace anxiety. This is the fruit of divine wisdom, a life with purpose, where each step is guided by divine revelation. Now that we understand the importance of this pursuit, it's essential to reflect on the difference between human wisdom and God's wisdom, so we can appreciate even more what we are seeking. Divine wisdom and human wisdom. Human wisdom, valuable as it may be, will always be limited. It is born from experience, accumulated knowledge, and the lessons we learn throughout life. However, even with all these influences, it is still subject to error. How many times have we made decisions based on what seemed like the most logical choice, only to later discover that we made a mistake? Human wisdom, despite its importance, has its flaws because it is rooted in circumstances and the restricted point of view of each individual. Divine wisdom, on the other hand, is perfect and unchanging. This difference between God's wisdom and human wisdom is what makes the pursuit of divine wisdom so essential. God's wisdom is not influenced by emotions, fears, or doubts. It is not limited by time or circumstances. When we seek divine wisdom, we connect with a source that goes beyond what we can comprehend on our own. And it is this wisdom that guides us to make decisions that often seem contrary to human logic but result in peace and clarity. Living a life with purpose means allowing divine wisdom to guide each step. A classic example of this distinction is the life of Solomon. When he became king, he didn't ask for wealth or power, but for wisdom to govern his people. God granted him this divine wisdom, and Solomon became known for his justice and ability to resolve complex conflicts. His story teaches us that God's wisdom is incomparable to human wisdom. While other kings sought material conquests, Solomon chose God's way, and it transformed his life and reign. The same applies to us. When we prioritize divine wisdom, we reap fruits far beyond what human understanding can achieve. In practice, trusting in God's wisdom often means making decisions that don't make sense at first glance. It can be difficult to let go of the security of relying solely on our own experience. However, when we surrender our decisions to God, we allow Him to reveal a greater purpose behind each situation. For example, in moments of financial challenges, human wisdom might lead us to fear and scarcity. But God's wisdom teaches us to trust in divine provision, knowing that He always has a bigger plan. It is important to remember that while human wisdom has its value, it should never be our only source of guidance. We must always seek divine revelation before making significant decisions. By doing so, we avoid mistakes that could have been prevented with God's guidance. This does not mean we won't make mistakes, but it does mean we have the chance to learn and grow from each situation, knowing we are on God's path. This trust gives us the peace necessary to face life's challenges. Now that we understand the fundamental differences between divine wisdom and human wisdom, let's explore the practical benefits of letting divine wisdom guide our lives. This wisdom not only directs us but also brings us protection, peace, and prosperity, as we will see next. Benefits of divine wisdom. Divine wisdom brings countless benefits to our everyday lives. One of the main benefits is clarity in decision-making. When we seek God's guidance, He shows us the right path to follow, even when all options seem confusing or difficult. This kind of clarity gives us the confidence to act firmly without fear of making mistakes. It's as if we're walking with a divine light illuminating our path, freeing us from the traps that could lead us astray. God's wisdom protects us from impulsive choices that often lead to painful consequences. Another clear benefit of divine wisdom is the inner peace it provides. When we trust God to guide us, there is no longer room for anxiety or fear. We know that regardless of the circumstances, He is in control. This peace transcends any human understanding and allows us to face challenging situations with serenity. Instead of being consumed by worry, we are filled with the confidence that we are aligned with God's purpose. This transforms our life and the way we face challenges. God's wisdom also offers us protection. When we follow His guidance, we avoid many dangers that could harm us, whether they be physical, emotional, or spiritual. It's like being under divine protection, where each step is carefully guided to keep us safe. This doesn't mean we won't face difficulties, but it does mean we will be better prepared to deal with them. The Bible shows us examples of people who, by following God's wisdom, were spared from great tragedies, such as Joseph, who was protected from imprisonment and death by following divine plans. In addition to protection, divine wisdom can also lead us to prosperity. But this prosperity is not just about material gain. It's about a full life where we experience success in various areas: relationships, health, finances, and, most importantly, our spiritual growth. God's wisdom teaches us to make decisions that bring us closer to our divine purpose, and this is reflected in all areas of our lives. When we align our choices with God's will, we experience the true meaning of living a life with purpose. A practical example of this benefit can be seen in moments of financial decision-making. While human wisdom might guide us to accumulate, often it is God's wisdom that teaches us to give. And paradoxically, by giving, we are blessed with even more. This doesn't mean we should act irresponsibly, but that divine wisdom shows us the balance between generosity and responsibility. By following these principles, we reap fruits that go beyond what we can imagine. Now that we understand the benefits that divine wisdom can provide, from clarity in decisions to prosperity, it is interesting to observe concrete examples of how this wisdom has impacted the lives of biblical and contemporary figures. We will see how ordinary people and great leaders have found spiritual transformation by following God's way. Biblical and contemporary examples. One of the most well-known examples of divine wisdom in the Bible is King Solomon. Faced with the great responsibility of governing the people of Israel, Solomon could have asked God for anything: riches, power, or victory over his enemies. But Solomon asked for wisdom. This request pleased God so much that he not only granted him wisdom but also prosperity and peace in his kingdom. Solomon's life is a clear testimony that divine wisdom can completely transform our trajectory. When we put God's purpose first, He guides us on paths that lead to lasting success. Another biblical example is Joseph, the son of Jacob. Sold into slavery by his own brothers and later unjustly imprisoned, Joseph could have allowed bitterness to consume him. But he chose to trust in God's wisdom, and along his journey, he was blessed in extraordinary ways. His unshakable faith led him to be elevated to the position of governor of Egypt, a position he would never have reached if he had relied solely on human wisdom. Joseph's story teaches us that even in the midst of adversity, divine wisdom can lead us to purposes greater than we can imagine. In contemporary times, the life of Corrie ten Boom offers us a powerful example of how God's wisdom can transform lives amidst suffering. During World War II, Corrie and her family hid Jews in their home, risking their own lives. They were imprisoned and taken to concentration camps, where they faced inhumane conditions. Even in the midst of such pain, Corrie chose to forgive her captors and continue to trust in divine revelation. Her life after the war was dedicated to spreading the message of God's love and forgiveness, demonstrating how divine wisdom brings healing and spiritual transformation. Another contemporary example of divine wisdom is Billy Graham, one of the greatest evangelists of the 20th century. Graham was a man who, throughout his life, sought God's guidance incessantly. His sermons, always based on biblical wisdom, touched millions of people around the world. He demonstrated that when we trust in God's wisdom, even in times of uncertainty or opposition, we find the direction needed to impact lives deeply and enduringly. Billy Graham's legacy is a living testimony to the transformative power of God's wisdom. In the examples of these people, both in Scripture and in modern times, we see a constant theme: Those who seek divine wisdom not only find solutions to their problems but also discover a greater purpose for their lives. Whether in times of prosperity or adversity, God's wisdom guided them on paths that otherwise would have been unimaginable. These examples show us that spiritual growth is not a solitary journey but a walk where God's wisdom sustains and transforms us. Now that we have seen how divine wisdom has impacted the lives of these people, it becomes clear that this path is available to all of us. The question that remains is, how can we apply this wisdom to our own lives, especially in practical, everyday situations? That is the next point we will explore. Now that you have received this knowledge about divine wisdom, the real question is, how will you apply it in your life? The spiritual transformation you seek is within your reach, but it begins with a decision. Are you ready to let God guide your decisions? Are you willing to seek this wisdom and put into practice the principles He has revealed to us? By doing so, you will not only change your own life but also impact the people around you in ways you cannot imagine. I encourage you to reflect on what was shared today. What in your life needs to be transformed by God's wisdom? Write in the comments if this content has helped you in any way, and if you would like us to pray for you, also leave your prayer request. It is always an honor to intercede for you and see how God has been working in your lives. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. That way, you won't miss any of the upcoming videos and can continue learning about God's path and the wisdom He has for each of us. May this wisdom accompany you, guide you, and transform you today and always.